So, today we're diving into the birth of Rome, and it's one of the greatest stories ever told. But here's the twist. There are really two versions of it. You've got the epic tale the Romans told about themselves, and then you have the story that's literally buried in the ground. We're going to dig into both. Does it just spring into existence in this one huge, dramatic moment of destiny? Or is it, a little bit messier, slower, a lot more complicated? That's really the question at the heart of how Rome began. Yeah, for the Romans, their story didn't start with some boring treaty or a political meeting. No, it started with a wolf, a she-wolf, and a couple of babies left to die. It's a story packed with gods, shocking violence, and this incredible sense of destiny. All right, so here's what we've got on tap. First, we'll dive into that epic origin story. Then, we're going to uncover what was really going on, thanks to archaeology. We'll explore why that myth was so powerful, and we'll wrap up by looking at the incredible legacy this story created. Okay, let's kick things off with a legend. The Romans wanted a past that was, well, heroic, and boy, did they write themselves a good one. This story has it all. I mean, we're talking gods, abandoned princes, and a city that's literally founded on a brother killing a brother. Doesn't get more dramatic than that. So you gotta understand, the Romans didn't just want to be some local Italian power. Oh no. They trace their roots all the way back to the legendary fall of Troy, saying, yeah, the hero Aeneas, that's our guy. He's our ancestor. It gave them this instant, super impressive, heroic backstory. Fast forward a few generations, and that's when our main characters finally show up. The twins, Romulus and Remus. And the story of these twins, it is pure drama. First off, their dad is Mars, the literal god of war, and their mom is a princess who is forced to become a priestess, a Vestal virgin sworn to chastity. So, of course, their evil great-uncle gets terrified they'll grow up and take his throne, so he orders them to be tossed into the Tiber River to die. But this is a myth, right? So fate or the gods had other plans. A she-wolf finds them, saves them, and nurses them back to health. Then a shepherd finds them and raises them. So they grow up, find out they're actually royalty, go back and reclaim their grandfather's throne, and then decide, hey, let's go build our own city. And what's wild is how specific the Romans were about this. They didn't just say around this time. No, they pinned it down to a single day, April 21st, 753 BCE, and they celebrated it every single year. But of course, founding a city isn't that simple, especially when you have two very ambitious brothers. They couldn't agree on where to build it. The gods sent a sign, an omen, that seems to favor Romulus, but Remus just isn't having it. He actually mocks his brother's brand new city walls. And this is where the story takes that really dark foundational turn. Rome isn't born from cooperation. It's born from fratricide. Romulus kills his own brother Remus and names the city after himself, Rome. Okay, so we have this absolutely incredible story, right? It's violent, it's divine, it's totally cinematic. But is it what really happened? Does it match what we can actually dig up from the ground? Let's shift gears and dig into the archaeology to see what's what. All right, so now we're shifting from the poets and storytellers to the archaeologists. Instead of epic poems, our clues are things like broken pieces of pottery, holes in the ground where ancient huts once stood, and old cemeteries. So what story do they tell? And right away, you see the huge difference. The myth gives us this neat package. One founder, one specific day, one big heroic and violent act. The reality that archaeology paints for us, it's a much slower, more organic process. It wasn't one guy. It was a bunch of different communities. And it didn't happen in a day. It took years, decades. So what the evidence actually points to is this. For a long, long time, those famous hills of Rome were just home to a bunch of separate little villages. Shepherds, farmers, that kind of thing. But then, right around 750 BCE, and this is what's so cool, it's amazingly close to the legend's date, these little settlements start to come together, probably for things like trade and mutual defense. And get this, archaeologists have actually found the remains of Iron Age huts on the Palatine Hill, the exact spot where the legend says Romulus had his hut. So really, this is the main takeaway from all the digging. Rome's founding wasn't one single event. It was a process, a slow unification, where all these different groups living on their own hills gradually decided to become one larger community, one city. Okay, so if the story of the twins and the wolf wasn't, literally true, then why was it so incredibly important to the Romans? Why did this story become the official version for the most powerful empire the world had ever seen? Well, because for them, the myth wasn't just some bedtime story. It was basically their identity. It was a blueprint for who they were. It explained everything. First, it said they were favored by the gods, descended from Mars himself. Second, that violent beginning, that told them they were destined for power, for conquest. And the fact that the city was born from two rivals, that symbolized their ability to bring different people together, under their rule, of course. Think about it. By telling themselves over and over that they were descended from the god of war and that their city was founded in a moment of decisive violence, the Romans basically gave themselves a green light, a permission slip to be aggressive, to conquer, and to dominate. The story was a self-fulfilling prophecy. It justified the empire before it even really existed. Okay, so for our last section, let's bring it all together. How did this mix, the reality of villages slowly merging and this incredibly powerful myth, how did that combo create the Rome we know? You can actually see that reality, the merging of different peoples, in early Roman culture. It wasn't just one single thing. It was a total melting pot, a crossroads. They borrowed stuff from everybody. From the Etruscans up north, they took ideas about architecture and even political symbols, like the fasces, that bundle of rods that meant power. From the Greeks to the south, they absorbed myths and gods. And their actual population? It was a mix of local Latin and Sabine tribes. And this is a great example of where the myth and the reality kind of blend together. The official story says that early Rome was ruled by 7 kings for more than 200 years. And guess who was number 1 on that list? Romulus, of course. He's the perfect bridge figure, connecting that divine, mythical founding to the actual start of Rome's political history. And if you want proof of just how deep this myth ran, look no further than how they counted their years. The Romans literally started their calendar, year 1, from that single mythical founding day. For them, all of recorded history began in 753 BCE. That little Latin phrase, ab orbe condita, which means from the founding of the city, shows you everything. This wasn't just a story, it was the anchor for their entire reality. So, at the end of the day, this is why the myth was so incredibly powerful. It gave them a sense of destiny. It was a story that told them, you are special. You were chosen by the gods. You were born for greatness. It was the ultimate fuel for the fire of their ambition, powering centuries of expansion and empire. And believe me, they made sure nobody ever forgot this story. The great poet Virgil wrote his epic, the Aeneid, which basically cemented that Trojan connection forever. They threw a huge party for the city's birthday every single year. And of course, that image of the she-wolf and the twins, it became the symbol of Rome, a symbol of raw power and miraculous survival that, let's be honest, is still famous all over the world today. So that leaves us with a pretty big question, doesn't it? In the end, what was it that really built Rome? Was it the slow, practical coming together of a few hilltop villages? Or was it the powerful, violent, and incredibly inspiring story they told themselves about who they were? And with Rome, it really seems like the answer has to be both. The reality laid the foundation, but it was the myth that gave them the ambition, the drive to build an empire right on top of it.